Дорогие гости Конгресса,
Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests of our Urban Health Congress, my name is Grigory Maltsov and welcome to this session. It's Mental Health Kit, Psychological Support for Citizens. And during this panel discussion, we'll be talking about mental disorders, psychological comfort, and ways to deal with mental and psychological disorders. We have a problem of stress, of depression. This problem is attributed to factors like work, permanent stress, environmental factors, and COVID-19 pandemic has added to this stress and seriously affected the comfort of people. A lot of people do not feel well when socially isolated. Like, for example, I'm sort of isolated on this stage today. I'm alone here. But let me introduce our guests and our speakers. But before I do so, I'd like to mention that stress and depression may become a factor of life in the life of every person. Each of us can experience that over the course of our lives. Today, we have Poppy Jaman, CEO of City Mental Health Alliance, as our speaker, Anastasia Vinnikova, who will be a co-presenter for Poppy Jaman, and Anastasia is responsible for well-being in Bank of England. Mary Larivara, Director of MEIELI Mental Health Finland, and we have Daria Utkina, a founder of Berezno k себе, meaning tender attention to your tender attitude to yourself. Poppy Jaman and Anastasia Vinnikova, please, the stage is yours.
Poppy, can
Thanks,
you hear us?
Gregory.
Okay, perfect.
That's fine, and I'm just gonna let me just screen share to kick off because I've got a presentation. I was quite enjoying the music then, Gregory.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, can you see my screen?
We can see you, but I'm not sure if we can see the screen. Yeah. Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah, perfect. It's working.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so look, thank you so much for inviting us to the Moscow Urban Forum, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here to talk about the role of workplace mental health. It's such an important subject and one that's extremely close to my heart. My colleague and friend Anastasia and I are going to do a double act, and I will try and set the scene, talk a little bit about the global picture, and then Anastasia, who is an award-winning mental health and well-being lead here in the City of London in one of our most prestigious organisations, the Bank of England, will then talk through the case study of Bank of England and why such an institute that is set in the financial sector is talking about and delivering on mental health. So please bear with us for the next 25 minutes while both of us talk through our presentation. So let me begin a little bit about myself and the City Mental Health Alliance. So our vision is to create mentally healthy workplace. And for me, that is about making sure that every business in the financial services sector will protect, will support, and create positive mental health for the people that work for them. And we set that vision up 10 years ago at the end of the financial crisis, when we saw a significant increase in stress, distress, suicidal ideation and suicide in the City of London, primarily amongst men of a certain age. And that led business leaders to come together from Goldman Sachs, KPMG, Linklaters, Bank of England, Financial Conduct Authority. On our website, you can see the list of the 30 big financial institutes and organizations that are our members. They all came together to try and solve this problem, because what we realized is that the bankers were blaming the accountants were blaming the lawyers, and this vicious circle was going round and round. And so the City Mental Health Alliance is the community for mentally healthy businesses. And what we did is brought all parts of the financial sector into a room to have a conversation, a compassionate dialogue about mental health, and to solve this problem together. 10 years on, we're in Hong Kong, Australia, Singapore. We're also developing chapters in India, Portugal, New Zealand. And I do hope that in time we will also be able to speak to businesses in Russia, in Moscow, in St. Petersburg around mental health, and maybe even have an ambition to have a presence and support businesses here in Russia. But the main thing about the City Mental Health Alliance is it is led by each country. So it is not Western leadership coming in and saying, this is how to do it. This is us saying, we are the mental health community. And when we come together, business-led, expert-guided, we can create a safe space for businesses to work together on this issue. So why is this such a big deal, and why are businesses thinking about this? I'll let you read the data that I've just presented here, but if I say to you that every 40 seconds, someone somewhere in the world is dying by suicide. So by the time we have finished this presentation, you can do the maths on how many people we will have lost in the world. 2 years ago, the Lancet Commission reported that mental illness is on the rise in every country in the world. And it will cost the global economy 16 trillion by 2030. And it is estimated that 12 billion working days are lost to mental illness in a year. In the UK, we know that mental ill health already costs the city businesses £45 billion a year. But no price, and I say this again with clarity, no price can be put on the human struggle and the loss that we feel if we lose someone to mental health struggles, especially when we know that many of these struggles and many of the deaths by suicide are preventable by a simple conversation. So this is some of the data that was presented before the pandemic, but we know that mental health struggles has been further exacerbated by the pandemic. People have not been able to access support even if they wanted to. And one of the data points that's really important here is that 10% of people in the UK accessed support for their mental health in the peak of the pandemic in their workplace. And that did several things. One, it took the burden off of our health system. Two, it meant that people were accessing support in an early intervention before their issues got so big that they were in crisis. And three, it started to normalize the conversation around mental health in every business, in every organization. And I know that Anastasia will be talking about that a little bit more. So let me just take you one step back. What is mental health? Here is a definition from World Health Organization. But often, when I say mental health, if I said to anybody on this call today, do you have mental health? I imagine most people would say no. But if I said to you all, do you have physical health? You would probably say yes. And this is really key. If you don't take anything else away from this presentation today, I would like you to really think about that. We all have mental health just like we have physical health. Sometimes the words mental health is misunderstood for mental illness. 1 in 4 people will experience a common mental health issue like depression, like anxiety. 1 to 3 person in 100 will experience something more severe like bipolar, psychosis. But we all have mental health in the sense that actually we are emotional human beings, and we healthy relationships foster our mental well-being. Giving, altruism, taking time out, being kind, that fosters our well-being. Moving and exercise fosters our mental well-being. Meditation, yoga, being present, those things foster our mental well-being. And what I've just named is the 5 ways to well-being. So just like our physical health can be supported with exercise and healthy eating, we can practice what I call the 5 ways to well-being, and that, please do look that up, the 5 ways to well-being, and they help foster our mental health and well-being. And if we practice those 5 things every day, every week, we create resilience so that when life struggles come our way, we are less likely to be at risk of mental health or mental illness. I hope that makes sense, but there is a real issue around stigma and the fact that we do not give mental health the same platform as physical health. And I really wanted to draw that out in today's presentation. So what does risk our mental health? How does our mental health become at risk? Trauma, loss, bereavement. In the pandemic, millions of people have died around the world, and some families have lost more than one person. So the accumulative multiple stresses of life, like financial worries, like bereavement, like starting a new family, like moving, like poor housing, injustice, poverty. These are all the things that can put us at risk of developing mental illness. And I go back to, how do we practice well-being, enhancing our well-being through making sure that we foster good relationships, that cities are designed with good housing, good transport, good education systems. But underneath all of that, we must still create opportunities and normalize the conversation around mental health by remembering that we all have mental health, and that is different to mental illness. Because this is the Urban Forum, I really wanted to draw an analogy with road safety on this. Every single person will know that actually, in order to be safe on roads, we have to pass a driving test. There's rules and regulations in every city in the world, in every country in the world, around road safety. And I took this data from 2018, which shows that there were almost exactly the same number of fatalities through road traffic accidents in Russia as there were suicides in 2018. And I just invite you to pause and look at those numbers for a moment and reflect on how we talk about suicide and how we might talk about deaths and fatalities in relation to road traffic accidents, both tragic, yet the stigma is such that, one, we will have compassion in a family situation, in discussions, but the other we will often sweep under the carpet and we won't talk about it. If I look at it from a parent perspective, I taught my children to cross the road by holding their hand and making sure that they were safe. But when it comes to mental health struggles and they start talking to me about their feelings and their emotions and the things that they may or may not be coping with very well, and that relates to mental health, their potential mental illness developing, actually shame comes in and stigma comes in. And I might end up saying to them, don't talk about that. And that is the number one thing that we all need to change. We all need to become educated on how to have a conversation around mental health. And we need to facilitate that discussion in our families, in our communities, in our workplaces. So Finally, just a couple of more minutes. I said to you earlier, 10% of people access mental health support at work, and that took the pressure off of the NHS. This is the leader of our health system, paying a very big compliment to the City Mental Health Alliance. Workplaces are a cornerstone of society, and they have a strong role to play in ensuring the prevention of mental health struggles developing. So every business, every organisation, every employer can do 3 things to change this. First of all, I think mental health needs to be a boardroom agenda. During the pandemic, we heard every person, regardless of where you are in a business, ask the question, how are you? We need to continue asking the question, how are you? And we need to be listening to that. But we also need to make sure that boards are measuring how the health of their people are and what they can do to continue to support them. The second thing that we need to do is storytell. When we tell stories of our mental health struggles, particularly those people in senior roles, we signal to our young people, to our family members, to our children, that actually it's okay to have a conversation around mental health, and here's some of the things that we can do. Each time someone tells their story, it diminishes the shame a little, and that moves us towards normalizing mental health, and that has got to be something that every country in the world is doing. And the third thing we can do is make sure that we work together. You know, cities around the world aren't just doing this because it's the right thing to do. I've already shown you the data around the cost to economy. This is about collaboration, governments, businesses, social care, education, all coming together to protect the next generation. There really is no health without mental health, and no city can be strong if its people are not resilient. So with that, I'm going to hand over to you, Anastasia, just to talk us through the Bank of England's case study.
Thank you so much, Poppy. And firstly, I just wanted to highlight what an honour it is to be speaking here today. As a Russian woman, you know, it's great for me to be able to connect my heritage and my passion for well-being. So, as Poppy discussed, employers are the cornerstone of society, so organisational cultures and working practices have implication far beyond the walls of offices and, you know, workforces. And that's something that we understand and are deeply passionate about at the Bank of England, where we have a duty and a responsibility to serve the public. And I want to talk about some of the wellbeing work that's taken place at the Bank of England by sharing a little of my own personal story, echoing what Poppy discussed just now about the power of sharing human experiences. So I've struggled with anxiety and depression since I was about 17, and I think what makes my story pertinent to presenting at the Moscow Urban Forum at a Russian conference is that as a Russian woman living in the UK, I still retained much of my Russian mentality around mental health and emotional health. And there are many things culturally which allude to, I think, our desire to not only present a certain image of ourselves externally, but also the necessity to come across as strong and resilient at all times. And some typical Russian phrases which I wanted to share, which resonated in my own head as I was going through these mental health struggles, were things like, "Не выносить ссор из избы," keep your arguments in your household. "Мужчины не плачут и не танцуют," men don't cry or dance. Работа и труд все перетрут. Hard work and effort conquer everything. Слезами горю не поможешь. Tears do not help grief. And these are very telling about the way that I believed mental health and emotion should be handled because of my cultural background, and I think importantly for this session reflect the impact that societal norms can have on our own perceptions of well-being. Equally, what's interesting to note is the language barrier to discussing mental health and well-being. It felt like in English there were softer phrases which spoke about the health of the mind, whereas in Russian, which was my mother tongue, all those same phrases felt very clinical, medical and final. And another example of societal behaviours, which organisations I believe can help to shape, can impact personal attitudes to mental health. And that's not a criticism, it's simply an observation, because in the UK when I was 17, we weren't that advanced in this space either, so I had no awareness or education around mental health to lean on, and I didn't really know what to do with myself. And it wasn't until many years later, when I joined the Bank of England 5 years ago, that I understood the profound impact of a positive organisational culture that's open to and supportive of well-being. When I joined the bank, suddenly I found access to so much support and so many colleagues, some significantly more senior than me, sharing their experiences and stories of mental ill health and how it hadn't hindered their professional progression. I very quickly understood that I was in a place where I could look after my health and build a framework around me that would enable me to succeed. The history of the wellbeing movement at the bank is really interesting and it's very deep-rooted. We've had in-house staff counsellors since the 1970s. We signed a public pledge to be open about mental health in the workplace in 2013. And next year, our employee-led mental health network will celebrate a decade of existence. But this topic for organisations and for societies requires consistent development and work. More recently, we've recognised that wellbeing is actually something that's very hard to articulate. So we came up with our first ever wellbeing strategy at the end of 2019. And although we're currently reviewing it to make it more measurable, for now what it has done is given us a definition of what does wellbeing actually mean to our organisation and why is it important? And that's a really important foundation to have to progress the wellbeing agenda in the workplace. We've also focused on wellbeing and the cultures associated with positive mental health being crucial right across all levels of the organisation. This means our leaders, training and skilling them in topics ranging from mental health and resilience through to supporting others on pregnancy loss, but it also means our new joiners, equipping them with the tools that they need to look after themselves and others around them, such as active listening. We've particularly tried to recognise the challenges of our younger colleagues making that difficult transition from education into the world of work, and we've enjoyed working with the City Mental Health Alliance and other organisations in progressing this agenda. Our feeling is that wellbeing is universal, and so our approach to it should be too. We've also recognised that workplace wellbeing isn't just about those mental health challenges that we face at work, it's the entirety of life. The challenges of our colleagues don't stop because they've walked through the office door or because they've logged into their computer for work. Difficulties like infertility, serious health condition diagnoses, bereavement, as Poppy mentioned, relationship problems, they all have the potential to impact our colleagues. So our support offering has to be holistic, inclusive and understanding of all of those different contexts that contribute to how we feel within ourselves. In acknowledgement of that, we were delighted this year to extend our emotional support helpline to cohabiting friends and relatives of our employees, recognising that the people that we care about also form a huge part of our wellbeing experience. We've been very fortunate at the bank. We're also very clear that, it's not just about thinking that we've got it right and that we can stop there. We try to measure, we try to share, and we definitely try to listen to our colleagues, importantly, but also to our peers across other organisations. We've experienced the immense power of learning from other organisations, and that's been through forums like the City Mental Health Alliance, because to emphasise, it's not just about us and our individual goals, it's about the responsibility that we have as organisations to create mentally healthy societies. I personally would encourage other cities, institutions and organisations to also reflect on the imperative for progress and wellbeing in the mental health space, and to consider how much more of an impact we can have on the society around us and the societal norms and behaviours around mental health if we work on this agenda collaboratively. Thank you.
Thank you, Poppy. Thank you, Anastasia. Before moving forward to another speaker, may I ask you a few questions that I have in mind? The first one would be to Poppy, as you are leading such a huge, important organization, which organizes companies which produce stress, but at the same time are trying to fight it. How tough is the task to form leadership, and where these leadership should come from in order to start thinking about work-related stress and the strategies to cope with that?
Thanks, Gregory. Look, so this is absolutely a leadership issue, and every business that we're working with around the world, it's the chief executives who have spoken to us, or me personally, to go, what can we do to support our people now, especially as a result of the pandemic, but what can we do to build the future of work so that people come to work and feel like their job is great for their mental health, and their job is part of their well-being toolkit, because we want to attract, retain and grow talent. So this isn't a health issue which needs to sit in HR. This is a business strategy issue to ensure that businesses grow talent and retain its USP in a competitive environment. And I think that's exactly right. This is a boardroom agenda, because if you haven't got great people working for you, and if you're not able to take care of those people, you're not going to foster loyalty, you're not going to foster belonging, and therefore your business in itself is at risk. And I think the numbers that I put up there speak for itself.
Thank you, Poppy. I have a couple of questions in mind, but I'll circle back to you if we'll have time. Catherine, I have also one question for you, which is related to the working group, which is usually, I guess, missed out, about the young people who are just starting their career. Is it really an issue, the process of looking for a job? Is it that stressful for them to begin the career, to work as temps or junior staff? What do you think?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think it's a challenge that's been underestimated for a long time. And just before the pandemic, what we started to see was research emerging suggesting that actually young people who are entering the workforce are particularly vulnerable and having significant difficulties with their mental health. There was some research that was done by Accenture that suggested that in the UK, 77% of young people had already experienced mental health challenges by the time that they had entered the workforce. And increasingly what we're hearing is that it's a very competitive kind of market for looking for jobs after you've finished education. And that is causing immense pressure and triggering a lot of mental health challenges. Often it's because, young people aren't talking about the experience of the difficulty of finding a role, trying to secure even places at university, trying to get work experience. And so when they look at their peers, it looks like everyone around them is successful, and actually in reality, they're only sharing the highlights and the positives, and everyone is going through some of those struggles. I think, though, from the point of view of organisations, it's also, important to acknowledge that they are having these difficulties, because a little while ago, the City Mental Health Alliance actually did some research around graduate job-seeking behaviours, and they found that 91% of their respondents were more likely to apply to an organisation that offered mental health support. So it's something that young people are going through. They are experiencing it, but they're also aware of that fact. So they're seeking employers and organisations that will treat them like humans that are deserving of support and care. So I think that's an important consideration, when we say that, yes, they are having these struggles in the job-seeking process.
Thank you, Anastasia. You might see that I mispronounced the name, but still, I guess isolation is affecting me. We're moving forward to another speaker, Daria Utkina. You've been involved for a long time in research in a very special area. Pardon, я могу говорить по-русски. Лучше буду обращаться так.
I'd rather speak English, Russian, sorry. You've been working for quite a long time in a very specific sphere related to stress, pregnancy, and this is a very hard subject to discuss, somehow stigmatized subject, and I would like to hear from you whether it's true and what are those challenges you face and address, and which way to cover. Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you. Let me introduce myself. I'm one of the founders of «Бережное отношение», «Бережно к себе». And this is a project for pregnant mothers, and we've been working with quite a number of various humanistic projects, and it was a city project and creation of the children's environment. And nowadays, I'm working with pregnant women and also help women at the time of their delivery. And Бережно к себе, cautious to yourself, is the first Russian online platform to assist women having after delivery depression and media. We have Instagram with all the data and describing the problems of women, and also we have online portal which was launched last year in the time of pandemic, and it is accessible to any woman and from any point at the global context. That it is not related to mothers per se, it is related to all. And we tend to say that women, right after the child's birth, is very vulnerable, and they are stigmatized as she is a mother on the one hand, and at the same time she is still in the midst of depression. And we tend to say that she becomes very egoistic. And we're talking about the support to women, what we may offer. It happens so that each fifth woman acquires something. It is a depression, and proceeding from the survey of Vera Dekukova, and she is working with women of mid-income and high income, and they have a very high level of stress, and this symptom may somehow convert into the mental symptom. This is related to well-to-do women, and not very many think about it, as they had to undergo a certain treatment. We also have the perinatal depression. Each seventh woman comes across this particular state. We don't have clinics of that sort to cure that disease. And some other diseases may occur. And altogether, if we have a look at each fifth or each seventh female, it becomes quite clear that she cannot overcome this bipolar impairment. It could be the post-traumatic impairment and other challenges to face. And talking about the statistics, so we tried to measure it. So far, we don't have the definitive data on that score, but we have the data of child's birth rate, and at the global context in particular, it's about 1.5 million children in 2018, and we may anticipate that minimum from 150 up to 300,000 women in Russia were subject to such impairments and depressions. Also, we may add that we may also think about the prenatal depression and perinatal depression. And in Instagram, we have quite a number of subscribers, and it's a real, actual problem, and it happens practically with all women after child's birth. What else should be added in terms of that particular problem? In some large cities and towns, the life is more or less comfortable. There are quite a number of services. Just females resort to child delivery, taxi specialists, more qualified and professional than in other areas. And we have a ramified infrastructure for child care and support, and also additional education, medicine. And there are some districts to have a very comfortable lifestyle. as opposed to other regions of Russia. But our studies show that all these benefits and services are accessible to the well-to-do families. And the visit of the psychotherapist inclusively. And as to the negative sides of the urban life, we may start from the infrastructure per se. And the last survey on COVID says that women in the midst of the childbirth and afterbirth may experience certain emotional outbursts, and if she is separated from the children, the newly born children, and scientists discovered the outburst of various emotions which are not typical of her, and she needs support and assistance, and she needs some preventive measures to be undertaken. And well-to-do women may also get an access to some services, but as to a pandemic, it was quite a problem. What else do we come across? We may find millions and millions of cases from the community. And when the quarantine started, the child was in a lockdown, especially in large cities and towns. Women tend to say that their mobility is constrained, and it affects to a large extent her behavior and her performance. And it's easier for her to get outside and reach a certain point, and that was prohibited in the course of the pandemic. And also children may be put in the environment which parents do not approve, or they're dissatisfied. There could be some marginal people there drinking beer, etc., in that open spaces. And the environment for children could be not necessarily an up-to-date one, and we would like to have a smooth ride with the perambulate, and we would like to have a balcony not on a highway but in the green area, and parents adequately assess their needs in terms of the environment and settings. And I like the story I've just highlighted, but so far it's not the case with Russia. What else to add about the mental health of young mother? Structural aspects are substantial, and we need to take them into account so that a woman feels calm and quiet and not nervous. And sometimes a woman cannot go outside the playground. It could be really a luxury for her if she does it. And women share their difficulties and their expertise in using the urban environment. They do support certain things, and sometimes they do oppose. And sometimes she may come across the situation that you are not awaited here. We have to take into account your needs, but you don't have to go there with your perambulator. And sometimes the barrier could hardly be cleared, and a woman may just come into a distressed state due to her social isolation. And actually we need to create some supportive spaces. And yes, even the formal support is not enough. And what else to add? The operations of the urban services. And we came across the situation that they are reluctant to visit psychotherapists, and they are not at all actually stupid ones, but they are some stigmatized, or the wrong medication is prescribed, or no medication at all if the women are breastfeeding, and they may come across certain threats from the part of the doctors, and if she wants to go someplace privately, it may also cause certain problems. And only when she visits a doctor for the 5th or 6th time, she may realize that this is the right doctor practicing the appropriate techniques and methodologies of curing the mental state. And we have very brave and bold women. They try to find the support for themselves, and I think it's a very substantial thing to have it, to have this case studies when we facilitate everything for these impaired ladies, and so the mental health has become a cornerstone issue, especially for young mothers. And we've been discussing within the 2-year period certain problems of the mental health. And it does work when we provide a certain support and we get the feedback. And that becomes really very substantial for the community. And when people are rendered certain assistance. And I got a whole list of the friendly women psychiatrists, and they may be helpful to us, thus minimizing the number of attempts of these impaired women while looking for assistance. And it is crucial for the community. And thus, we may find a conflict of these women with the social media. And if we have a chance to assist them in the offline format, that is really great. And women tend to write that they are really very grateful. Thank you, Daria.
Thank you very much. Very informative report, and it's quite a difficult topic. And it's a public topic, but it is being rarely discussed. And you gave us a lot of food for thought. Let me ask you a question. And the question is about awareness on this situation. Do you think that information on what you told us is publicly available and it can be easily disseminated? Have you seen this information being made available in city districts, for example? Mental health of mothers is not being tracked and is not being measured. Yes, so information is fairly scarce. There are some fragmented research. Like one of these researchers belonged to us. We performed it for the Belый Город. We studied one district in Moscow, which was Hamovniki. So and looking into the district infrastructure, we realized that there are a lot of different groups and centers where children were getting engaged in different activities. But then we tried to rank the cost of these activities, And we realized that a bigger part of these activities were not accessible. So they were far too costly, and these things were not available to a particular social group. So I think it would be interesting to run a similar research across Moscow, because based on the information that I have and based on different interviews that I'm currently doing, I think I can say that Moscow is not a homogeneous city. We have districts where we have good doctors, good experts to take care of the mothers and kids, and we have different facilities to take care of the kids. And we also have districts where these services are hardly available, or are available with great difficulties. So it would be good to see more homogeneity here. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Daria. Thank you so much.
Moving to our next speaker, Meri Larivara from Finland. As I mentioned before, she's leading as the director of MIELI, for the Finnish Association for Mental Health. And we're quite aware that Finland is ranked the happiest nation in the world, though there are still some issues related to mental health that are being tracked by the organization that Mary is leading. And I believe that she will cover some approaches, ideas, and what she seems important even between the happiest people in the world. Mary, please.
Thank you. I actually have a presentation, so I'll first share my screen with you. Let's see if I can make it function. Yeah, it seems promising. Here we are. I believe you can see my screen now.
Yes.
So, as Greg just introduced, I come from Finland, from MIELI Mental Health Finland, where I lead our work on adult mental health. And actually, we are the oldest still functioning mental health NGO in the world. And our focus is on promoting mental health and preventing mental health problems. So I think my presentation will actually resonate quite nicely with what Poppy just presented earlier, and that Anastasia contributed to this afternoon as well. And in addition to promoting mental health, we also coordinate and operate a national crisis center network together with local mental health associations. So we really have a nice access to the whole of country in Finland. And one of our focuses is to advance the mental health literacy of children, adolescents, adults, and the elderly. And our starting point really is the WHO definition of mental health. So for us, mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, and can work productively, and or is able to make a contribution to their community. So we really also think that everybody has mental health, just like Poppy said. And for us, mental health at its best can be really a positive resource that helps us to lead a satisfying life. And I actually wanted to share with you this picture to demonstrate what mental health can really mean instead of mental health disorders. And if you look at this picture here, you can see that there are lots of positive things that can be related to mental health. For instance, there is the awareness of one's own potential, or ability to love, or caring about others, or living a joyful life. And all this is really what mental health is about. I think I will skip this picture and I will instead go to this one. In Finland, we introduced a mental health strategy for a 10-year period last year. It was published in February 2020, just before the COVID-19 virus entered Finland. And one of the starting points for us when developing the mental health strategy for Finland was that we realized that significance of mental health is increasing in the society. And there are lots of reasons for this. One of the most important for us seemed to be that the work is changing currently. And increasingly, mind is a crucial tool for many of us at our work, and it's an asset at working life. And for instance, in Finland, mental health disorders are actually the reason for more than half of the disability pensions currently in Finland. And that really reflects how mental health is becoming more and more important in working life, because we do know that the prevalence of mental health disorders has not increased in Finland, but rather it is so that different kind of symptoms or mental health related problems are becoming more difficult to manage in today's working life. Well, furthermore, the current life really requires us an ability to make choices, and it also provides us with opportunities to make more choices. And in order to make choices that can provide, that can really help us to lead a happy life, we need mental resilience, we need lifelong learning, and we need an ability to make independent decisions. Then there is urbanization and migration, which means that there are more variety in values and more variety in lifestyles, and that requires more flexibility of our minds. Then there is, of course, the technological development and all types of cognitive requirements that it sets to us. Well, then I wanted to point out that there are actually different factors that influence our mental health. There are individual factors. We often tend to think that mental health is something that is related to an individual, that it is sort of a quality of an individual. But really, in addition to the individual factors, social and interpersonal factors have a very significant role in shaping our mental health, and so have structural factors in society and cultural values, as Anastasia actually highlighted very nicely earlier in her presentation today. And what we focus quite a bit in Finland is mental health skills. They include emotional skills, for example, self-awareness skills, life skills, interpersonal skills, and problem-solving skills, and the ability to seek help. And we have really chosen to focus on these in the work of Mieli Mental Health Finland, because this is something that everyone can develop at any stage of their lives. So we really can improve everybody's mental health, and we can also improve their mental health skills. And what we have done is we have developed a mental health resilience training that was inspired by the Australian mental health first aid training, but our emphasis here is on promoting mental well-being. And it is intended for all citizens, but it is also commonly used to train professionals, for example, at health and social services, and it aims to strengthen the mental health skills of the participants. It is a course of 14 hours, and it includes short lectures, group discussions, and a variety of group exercises. Mieli Mental Health Finland has trained more than 800 instructors in Finland, and approximately 500 of them are active currently. The contents of our mental health resilience training are as follows. So there are 5 parts in it. There is mental health as part of health and well-being, so a holistic perspective to mental health. Emotions and emotional skills. Then there is crisis as a part of human life. Suicidal behavior and domestic violence are included in this section of our training. Then relationships and interactions. And finally, life skills such as nutrition, sleep, physical exercise, culture and nature. Very much the same things as in the 5 ways well-being. And there is also a textbook that is included in the training. And our aim is really to train a lot of people with our mental health resilience training. For instance, in 2016 and 2017, when we were participating in a government program for promoting health in Finland, we trained 20,000 Finns with our mental health trainings. And we really have this hypothesis that leads our work in mental health skills. We don't have really proof that could support this, but as I said, it is kind of an hypothesis. And we say that when most people in a community have mental health skills, even those who are more vulnerable will be protected. So we can kind of create a herd immunity to mental health problems when we are training people with mental health skills. Of course, this does not mean that there would not be any mental health disorders if everyone has sufficient mental health skills, but nevertheless, we can really diminish the amount of stress factors and the amount of symptoms if we can provide more people with good mental health skills. And that's actually what I wanted to present here. And I do think we still have one more presentation left today.
Not really, you're the last one, but we have a bit of time, especially because the second event is being a bit late. I have one question because it's related to some topics that most of you have connected your speech to or mentioned. It's the social stigma. And I will begin from the end with you, Mary. What would be the ways to fight stigma on mental health issues? Because I know you trained 500 instructors, but still you have to work with young ones, with children, to make them realize that this thing is okay to talk about.
Well, in Finland, we actually have a national curriculum for our schools. And part of the national curriculum is health education. And that also includes training in mental health skills in Finland nowadays. So it is part of the sort of the compulsory school curriculum in Finland. And well, the situation is not perfect at the moment in Finland. Not all the teachers are really trained to teach this topic. But basically, it is something that is developing currently in Finland very nicely. And more students are learning mental health skills and also about mental health disorders at school.
Okay.
One thing, yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'll start back as promised to Poppy and Anastasia with the same question. Of course, you work with special kind of stress, mainly with this work-related stress, but it's really a taboo, especially in a society of high-performance financial sector. What would be your thoughts on that issue?
So, Gregory, I think mental health struggles is often associated with weakness. And actually, what we see when people in the business world talk about their mental health struggles, and as Maria just pointed out, it's also about positive language around mental health. Actually, you start to change that. Mental health struggles is not synonymous with weakness, and performance has got nothing to do with mental illness. So in the same way that if one of us had diabetes, we wouldn't say that that was performance related. Mental health illness is a health issue, and it needs to be treated separately to that. And I think and that's why storytelling is one of the core components of the City Mental Health Alliance community. Every event that we do, we have someone telling their story, just as Anastasia did today, because we believe that, again, when we talk about ourselves and our lived experience, we actually make it a reality for everybody, and we give permission for people to talk. Between 10 and 15 women experience depression after they've had a baby, postnatal depression. I had postnatal depression, and that was my first experience of mental health struggles, and I had no idea what was going on. And at the time, it got so bad because, again, I'm from the British Bengali community, and we don't talk about it. We don't talk about mental health struggles. We don't talk about depression. We don't talk about postnatal depression. So I didn't ask for help until I was suicidal. I had suicidal ideation. I was so ill that's what I wanted, to end my pain, not my life. And I didn't know that at the time. And actually, it was my health visitor that got me the support that I needed. So when we share that in a normal way like this, it gives other women permission to go, oh, okay, there is recovery, there is hope, because Poppy's still a mother and she's still working and she's still having a fulfilled life and she's not locked up in an institute, which is often the fear. So we have to get rid of fear, we have to get rid of the shame, and we can only do that by sharing our personal stories.
Okay. Anastasia, if you have anything to add, you're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I think in the context of the workplace, what's really important, as Poppy said, is the storytelling piece, but also education. I think very often stigma comes from misunderstanding and, not knowing enough about the topic. So you come to conclusions, you create shortcuts for what it must mean if somebody has struggles with their mental health. So from an organisational perspective, I think that we have an opportunity to upskill and inform and to raise awareness amongst our workforce. And, it kind of comes back to what I was saying earlier, that then has a knock-on impact on society. That education is not just confined within, your 9 to 5 or whatever hours you work. That will then extend to your relationships with your family, with your friends, with your neighbours, with people that you might see out and about in your community. So I think that, yes, there is kind of, traditionally perhaps a competitive atmosphere within workplaces, particularly in the finance sector, that has probably driven a lot of poor practices around mental health and well-being. But also the way that we change that is by educating people about the impact of looking after ourselves and others, but also that mental illness shouldn't be something that we're afraid to talk about. It's part of life, it's part of the human experience for so many people. So the more we can educate in workplaces, I think the more we can do to contribute to societal decrease of stigma.
I can only agree. К сожалению, время нашей сессии подходит к концу.
Well, unfortunately, we have run out of time, and we have to prepare our hall to the next session.
Московского урбанистического форума, которые посвящены тематике Urban Health, как прекрасный зал. Приглашаю всех.
So I'm inviting you to visit the next session. Please reconnect in 20 minutes. There will be a presentation of results of those laboratories which were working on the sidelines of Moscow Urban Forum. Let me thank you very much for your presentations. Thank you for your involvement. Thanks for your time, and good luck. Bye.